Princess Liara sat in the grand hall of the Zathar Palace, her gaze drifting toward the windows where the distant stars sparkled like a field of diamonds in the sky. Her mind was far away from the political discussions happening around her, her thoughts instead fixated on one man, Marcus, the human soldier who had been brought to the Zathar Empire as part of a peace treaty. She first met Marcus during a formal event, a gala meant to celebrate the new alliance between the Zathar Empire and Earth. While most of the Zathar officials had been skeptical of the humans' presence, Liara had been drawn to Marcus from the moment she laid eyes on him. There was something in the way he carried himself, a quiet strength that spoke of hardship and determination. Unlike the other humans she had encountered, Marcus did not try to impress anyone with boasts or flashy gestures. He simply existed in the room with an unshakable presence. The peace conference had gone well, and Marcus had spoken eloquently, representing his people with pride. But it was not just his words that intrigued Liara, it was his eyes, filled with a depth of emotion that she couldn't quite understand. He seemed distant, yet there was a kindness about him that felt unlike any other soldier she had ever met. She found herself wondering if he saw her the same way. As the days passed, Liara could feel a connection growing between them. They spent several private moments together, brief conversations in the palace garden, late-night walks by the fountains, and shared glances across crowded rooms. Liara was not blind to the subtle spark between them. It was something real, something that neither of them could deny. But then something changed. Marcus began to avoid her. It started with small things. He would not respond to her messages, or when they were in the same room, he would turn away, pretending to be busy with other matters. At first, Liara told herself it was just a phase, that maybe Marcus was overwhelmed with the political duties he had to attend to. But as the days wore on, her heart sank with the realization that he was deliberately distancing himself from her. She tried to ignore the pang of disappointment that gnawed at her chest, but it was hard. She had seen him laugh with the other diplomats, seen him share stories with the soldiers, and yet when she approached him, his demeanor shifted. It was as though she were an intruder in his world, a world that no longer included her. One evening, during a formal banquet held in honor of the peace talks, Liara found herself standing near the entrance of the hall, her gaze sweeping the crowd. She spotted Marcus across the room, engaged in a conversation with another Zathar official, his posture stiff, his expression guarded. It was then that the weight of the situation hit her fully. Why was he avoiding her? What had changed? Was it something she had said or done? The questions plagued her mind, and her heart ached with uncertainty. She had tried everything to get closer to him, but now it seemed like he wanted nothing to do with her. Her thoughts were interrupted when she felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to find her trusted advisor Zara standing beside her, her expression gentle but knowing. "Your Highness," Zara began, her voice soft, "is everything well?" Liara forced a smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Yes, Zara, everything is fine." Zara studied her for a moment, sensing the unease that radiated from Liara. "I can see that something is troubling you. Is it him?" Liara didn't need to ask who Zara was referring to. "It's just that, Marcus," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's been avoiding me, and I don't understand why. I thought there was something between us." Zara's expression softened, and she placed a comforting hand on Liara's arm. "Sometimes, Highness, people are afraid of what they feel. Perhaps Marcus is struggling with something he cannot express." Liara shook her head, the frustration growing within her. "But why? Why does he push me away when all I want is to understand him better?" Zara was silent for a moment, as if considering her words carefully. "There may be more to this than you realize, Your Highness. Sometimes, even the bravest warriors are afraid to confront their own hearts." Liara wanted to argue, but she couldn't. Zara's words lingered in her mind, echoing like a distant warning. She had felt it in the way Marcus avoided her, the hesitation, the distance that had grown between them like an invisible wall. But what was it that kept him from her? What was it that he feared? That night, Liara lay awake in her chambers, staring up at the ceiling as the stars shimmered outside her window. She tried to make sense of the situation, to understand what had gone wrong. She had known that the path to peace would not be easy, but she had never expected this. Her thoughts kept returning to Marcus, his eyes, his quiet strength, and the way he made her feel as though she were the only person in the room. The connection between them was undeniable, and yet he pushed her away at every turn. What was it that he feared? The following morning, Liara's mind remained clouded with confusion and frustration. It had been 2 days since Marcus had last spoken to her, and with each passing hour, her sense of uncertainty grew. She tried to keep her composure, attending to her royal duties, but her thoughts were consumed by one question: why was Marcus avoiding her? The palace felt unusually quiet that day. The usual hum of activity, the laughter of servants, the soft clinking of dishes in the kitchens seemed distant, as though muffled by an invisible barrier. Liara found herself walking through the hallways with a heavy heart, unable to shake the weight of her growing frustration. As she passed the grand garden where she and Marcus had shared their first conversation, she stopped. The garden, filled with vibrant flowers and lush greenery, was supposed to be a place of peace, a place for reflection. But now it only reminded her of the distance that had formed between her and Marcus. She stood by the fountain, watching the water ripple gently, her fingers brushing the cool surface. A part of her wished that the water could wash away her confusion, but deep down, she knew the answer would not come so easily. She took a deep breath and turned toward the path that led to the training grounds. She had been avoiding it for the past few days, but now she knew what she had to do. If Marcus would not come to her, then she would go to him. She needed to understand what had happened, to hear the truth from his own lips. The training grounds were quiet when she arrived. The sound of weapons clashing, the grunts of soldiers pushing their limits. It was a place where strength was forged, where the Zathar warriors trained for battle. And it was here that Liara saw him. Marcus was standing near the edge of the field, his posture tense, his eyes focused on the soldiers as they practiced. He was in his standard human military uniform, his dark hair slightly disheveled from the exertion. He looked every bit the warrior, his presence commanding respect. But there was something in his eyes, something that didn't belong. It was as if he was there but not truly present. He was lost in thought, his mind far away. Liara took a few cautious steps forward, her heart racing. She had to do this. She had to know why he was avoiding her. "Marcus," she called softly, her voice steady despite the anxiety that gripped her. He turned at the sound of her voice, his expression briefly softening before quickly hardening. "Princess," he replied, his tone neutral but distant. "I didn't expect to see you here." Liara swallowed, trying to steady her nerves. "We need to talk." For a moment Marcus hesitated. His eyes flickered toward the soldiers still training and then back to her. "There's nothing to discuss." The words stung, but Liara refused to back down. "You've been avoiding me," she said, her voice firmer now, though her heart ached. "And I don't understand why. What have I done?" Marcus clenched his jaw, clearly struggling with something inside himself. He stepped back slightly, running a hand through his hair. "It's not about you, Liara," he said, his voice tight. "It's not about anything you've done." "Then what is it?" she demanded, taking a step closer, her gaze locked onto his. "Why are you pushing me away?" Marcus looked at her then, his eyes filled with a mixture of frustration and something else, something he seemed unwilling to acknowledge. "Because I'm not the man you think I am," he said quietly. "I'm not the man you need me to be." Liara's brow furrowed. "What does that mean?" He shook his head, his eyes now cast downward. "You come from a people who have peace, stability, and power. Your people have the resources to build a future, to create something that will last. But I I'm just a soldier. I come from a world that's constantly at war, where survival is all that matters. I'm not someone who can offer you what you deserve." Liara's chest tightened as his words sank in. "You think I can't handle it?" she asked softly, though her heart was breaking. "That I'm too fragile for the world you live in?" "No," Marcus said quickly, his voice thick with regret. "It's not that, it's that I'm afraid. Afraid that no matter how hard I try, I'll always be a part of that world. A world where love is a luxury we can't afford. A world where I can't promise you anything more than the pain of losing someone you care about." Liara stared at him, trying to process the weight of his words. The man standing before her, this soldier, this warrior, was afraid. He was afraid of love, afraid of the very thing that made him feel alive. But what he didn't realize was that it was that very thing that made him worth fighting for. "I don't need promises," Liara said, her voice steady now, filled with the certainty she had been holding back. "I need honesty. I need you to be real with me. You don't have to promise me a perfect future, Marcus, but I need to know that you're willing to try, that you're willing to face the darkness, even if it means you don't have all the answers." Marcus looked at her, his eyes searching hers for a moment as though trying to gauge whether she truly understood. Slowly, he stepped toward her, his gaze softening. "Liara," he began, his voice raw, "I don't know how to love without losing. I don't know if I can ever be the man you deserve." Liara reached out, placing a hand on his arm. "I don't need perfection, Marcus," she whispered. "I need you, and if you're willing to fight for us, then that's all I need." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The world around them seemed to hold its breath, the sounds of the training field fading into the background. And in that silence, something shifted. Marcus seemed to relax, just slightly, as if the weight of the world had been lifted from his shoulders. "I don't know if I'm ready," he murmured, his eyes still on her, his hand gently brushing against hers. "But I'll try. For you," Liara smiled, a soft, hopeful smile. "That's all I ask." As they stood there, the weight of the moment hung between them. It wasn't the resolution she had hoped for, but it was a start. A small, fragile beginning that could lead to something more. And that was enough for her. Marcus looked at her once more, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hope. "I don't deserve you, Liara," he said quietly. "You don't have to," she replied, her voice firm. "You just have to be yourself." And in that moment, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Liara knew that their journey had only just begun. It wouldn't be easy, and there would be many challenges ahead, but for the first time in days, she felt a spark of hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, they could find a way to bridge the gap between their worlds. But that, she knew, was something they would have to figure out together. The days that followed were not easy. The tension between Marcus and Liara lingered, neither of them sure where their newfound understanding would take them. Marcus, despite his decision to try, still carried the weight of his fears. He was a soldier, someone used to fighting wars, but not for something as delicate as love. Liara, on the other hand, had grown up in a world where peace was taken for granted, where love was something you didn't have to fight for. It was simply there. And yet, here she was, fighting for something she wasn't sure could survive in the harsh reality of the world Marcus had known for so long. Liara's thoughts wandered back to the garden, where they had first opened up to each other. That day had seemed like a promise, like the start of something beautiful, but the days that followed were filled with uncertainty. She had tried to be patient with Marcus, but his distance was hard to ignore. He still struggled with his fear of losing her, and the weight of his past hung over them both. She could see it in his eyes, the way he would look at her with longing, yet immediately pull away as if he were afraid to get too close. They both knew the stakes. The Zathar Empire had its eyes on humanity. It wasn't just about peace anymore. It was about something greater, something that could change the course of the galaxy. Liara had to maintain her duty, her responsibility to her people. But was that more important than the future she saw with Marcus? She had never imagined this kind of choice. In her world, Love was something people found without struggle, not something you had to decide between and fight for. But Marcus had made her realize that their worlds were not the same, and that meant their love couldn't be either. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky with shades of orange and pink, Liara found herself standing on the balcony of the palace, her hands resting on the cool stone railing. She had been thinking about the future, her future with Marcus, if there even was one. She had known that peace between the Zathar and humans wasn't going to be easy. There were too many differences, too much history between their peoples. But she had hoped that she and Marcus could be the bridge between them, that they could make something different happen. Footsteps behind her interrupted her thoughts. She didn't need to turn around to know who it was. She could feel his presence, the quiet strength, the hesitation, the pain. Marcus stood a few steps away, watching her with a cautious expression. His face was shadowed, but there was something in his eyes that told her he had been struggling with something deep inside. "Marcus," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He stepped closer, his eyes searching hers. "I've been thinking," he began, his voice low and uncertain. "About us, about everything." Liara nodded, her heart beating faster. She had known this conversation was coming. She just didn't know if she was ready for it. "I'm scared," he said, the words heavy with the weight of his confession. "I'm scared that no matter how hard I try, I'll end up losing you. I've lost so many people in my life, Liara. I don't know how to be part of something that matters without it falling apart. I don't know how to love you and still be the person I was before." Liara turned to face him, her eyes meeting his. "You don't have to be perfect, Marcus," she said softly. "You just have to be here, with me. We can face this together, whatever comes. I know it won't be easy, but that's what makes it worth fighting for." Marcus looked at her, his expression torn. "But I don't know if I can. I've been through so much. There's a part of me that's always waiting for the other shoe to drop. I don't know how to let go of that fear." Liara reached out and touched his hand, her fingers gently brushing his. "I understand. I'm scared too, but we can't let fear control us, Marcus. We can't let it define our future. We have to face it head-on together." There was a long silence between them, and for a moment, Liara wasn't sure if he would say anything more. But then, slowly, Marcus stepped closer, closing the gap between them. His hand gently cupped her cheek, his thumb brushing over her skin as if memorizing the feeling of her touch. "I don't know what the future holds," he said, his voice raw with emotion. "But I know that I don't want to lose you, not without trying. Not without giving everything I have." Liara smiled, a small but genuine smile. "Then let's try. Let's try to make it work. No matter how hard it gets, we can't know everything. We can't control the future, but we can make the choice to fight for it." Marcus took a deep breath, as though the weight of his fear had lifted, even if just a little. "Okay," he said quietly. "I'll fight for it, for us." And in that moment, something shifted. It wasn't a magical resolution or a perfect answer. But it was the first step. Two people, imperfect and scared, choosing to face the unknown together. For the first time, Liara felt the weight of the future not as something she had to carry alone, but as something they would carry together. The next few days were filled with a sense of quiet determination. Marcus and Liara continued their duties, but there was a change in the air, a subtle shift in their interactions. Marcus no longer avoided her. He still struggled with his fear, but now there was an openness between them, a willingness to face the challenges ahead. They spent time together in the garden, talking about everything and nothing. They shared stories of their childhoods, of the things that had shaped them into who they were. Marcus talked about his training as a soldier, the loss of his family, the wars he had fought, and the scars they had left on him, both physical and emotional. Liara listened, her heart aching for him but also understanding in a way she hadn't before. She shared her own story, her life in the Zathar Empire, the weight of her title, and the loneliness that often came with it. She told him about the expectations placed on her as a princess, the pressure to be perfect, to always have the right answers. As they talked, they began to see each other not as two people from different worlds, but as two souls connected by a shared longing for something real. They were both scarred in different ways, both carrying their own burdens, but together they could make something better out of it. Weeks passed and the bond between them deepened. They fought side by side in diplomatic meetings, supporting each other as they navigated the complex world of intergalactic politics. They spent time learning about each other's cultures, finding common ground where they had once seen only differences. But even as their connection grew stronger, they both knew that their love would not be easy. The galaxy was vast, and the challenges they faced were far from over. But for the first time, they both understood that love was not just a feeling, it was a choice. And as long as they were willing to choose each other, no matter the obstacles, they could face anything. One night, as they sat together in the palace, watching the stars twinkle outside the window, Liara turned to Marcus, her voice soft. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't met, if we had never crossed paths?" Marcus smiled, his eyes meeting hers. "I try not to think about it, because what matters is now. What matters is that we're here together." And in that moment, Liara realized that he was right. The future was unknown, but they had the present. And in that present they had each other. It was enough.